Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. My wife and I saw our 5-year-old daughter walk past the kitchen. Except she was older. It was one of those gray, ordinary Saturdays in early January where the sky looks like wet cardboard and time moves in slow motion. We live in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor, the kind of place where you know every creak of the floor and every shadow on the wall. Our daughter was in the living room watching Bluey, sprawled sideways on the couch with her blanket and stuffed rabbit. My wife and I were in the kitchen, half talking, half zoning out, prepping lunch. The layout of the apartment is simple. Kitchen at one end, short corridor in the middle, living room at the far end. From where we stand in the kitchen, we can't see the living room directly, but we can see the corridor and the bit of wall where it turns the corner into the living room. That corner is important. My wife was standing at the counter, chopping vegetables. I was sitting on the chair behind her, scrolling nothing in particular on my phone, and nodding at whatever we were talking about, bills, work, something about my mother, I don't remember. It was just normal life, the kind of moment you never think you'll remember. She started to turn around to say something to me, knife still in her hand. She got halfway through the turn, and then just stopped. Completely. Her body froze, her eyes locked past my shoulder, toward the kitchen doorway. The knife hovered midair. At first I thought she was messing with me, or had zoned out, but her face was wrong. Her mouth was slightly open, the color draining from her cheeks like someone had pulled a plug. I remember frowning and saying, "What is it?" She didn't answer. Her chest barely moved. It was like someone had just hit pause on her. Then she sucked in the biggest gasp I've ever heard, this sharp, wet inhale that sounded like it physically hurt. The knife slipped a little in her hand. That sound made every hair on my arm stand up. That's when I turned toward the door. And I saw someone. It happened fast, like a flicker, but not fast enough that my brain could write it off as nothing. I saw the back of a tall, slender figure crossing the corridor, already mid-step, turning into the living room. I caught a flash of a floral dress, the movement of long hair, and the curve of a calf in a high heel lifting from the floor. It was so normal and wrong at the same time. My brain did exactly what you'd expect. Intruder. Someone is in the apartment. Someone is near my kid. My heart hammered, so hard it felt like it was in my throat. My first instinct was not logical thought. It was pure animal panic. I jumped up so fast the chair scraped the tiles. The only thing in front of me was the knife my wife was holding, so I grabbed it out of her hand. "Call the police," I yelled. She didn't move. Her eyes were glassy, wet, fixed on the doorway where the figure had just walked past. Her fingers were trembling so hard they made little clicking sounds against the counter. I didn't wait to see if she listened. I charged into the corridor, knife in hand, heart pounding so loud it drowned out every other noise. The corridor was empty. The living room entrance was right there, just a few steps away. I turned into the living room expecting something. A stranger. A shadow. A scream. Anything. Instead, my daughter looked up at me from the couch, Bluey still playing behind her. She blinked at me, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, but not from fear, just confusion. "Daddy," she said. "What's up?" I realized how I must look, wild-eyed, breathing hard, clutching a kitchen knife. I forced my voice to relax. "Hey, princess," I said, my voice cracking. Did someone come in here? Did you see anyone walk past?" She frowned, glanced at the hallway, then back at me. "No." She dragged out the word like it was obvious, and I was being weird. The entire room felt wrong. Too quiet. The air felt thick, like when you walk into a room where people have just been arguing. I could feel my pulse in my temples. I checked anyway. I searched behind the couch, behind the curtains, under the table. I checked the windows, all closed and locked. We're on the 3rd floor, and if someone had jumped out, they'd be in the hospital. I checked the hallway, the bathroom, the wardrobes in both bedrooms, even places no full-grown adult could reasonably fit. Nothing. No shoes by the door that weren't ours. No bag. No open window, no broken lock. The front door was still closed, deadbolt in place. We hadn't heard it open. We hadn't heard anything. 10 minutes later, sweating and shaking, I had to accept what my eyes didn't want to. There was no one there. I went back to the kitchen. My wife was leaning against the counter, her face wet with tears, her hands covering her mouth. The knife I'd taken from her spot lay abandoned on the cutting board. She hadn't called the police. I don't even think she'd moved. Hey, I said, dropping the knife into the sink and going to her. "It's okay. There's no one here. I checked everywhere. It's fine." She tried to talk, but her jaw trembled too much for words to come out. I wrapped my arms around her. She clung to me like she was drowning, her whole body shaking. It took a few minutes before she could get a full sentence out. When she did, it came in broken pieces. I saw her, she said. Her? She nodded, swallowing hard. A woman. Tall. Taller than me. Floral dress with blue flowers. And heels. White ones. She walked right past the door. She squeezed her eyes shut. She stopped and looked right at me. I felt my skin go cold. I saw her turning into the living room, I said. I only caught the end. Just her back. My wife opened her eyes and stared at me, horrified. You saw her too, she whispered. If I hadn't, I said slowly, I'd be telling you to go to therapy right now. She let out a short, broken laugh that turned into a sob. It wasn't just a woman, she said. It was our daughter. I frowned. What do you mean? She looked like her, my wife said, voice thin. Not exactly. Older. Maybe 19? 20? But it was her. Same face. Same eyes. Same little freckle near her nose. The way she tilts her head when she's shy. It was like looking at our kid, just stretched into the future. I felt something twist in my stomach. You're sure? I asked, even though I knew she was. She nodded, tears spilling over again. She was walking across the corridor like she lived here, my wife said. Like she'd done it 1,000 times. She stopped when she saw me looking at her. Our eyes met. And her expression, she shuddered. She looked scared. Not of me. Like she was scared to be seen. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. When I gasped, she continued, she flinched, like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. Then she hurried around the corner into the living room. That's when you looked and saw her turn. I remembered the way the figure had moved, fast, purposeful, no hesitation. Not gliding, not ghostly. Just normal. Solid. We didn't hear any footsteps, I said slowly. No heels, my wife whispered. On these tiles we'd hear it. But there was nothing. Just silence. And her staring at me. We stood there in the kitchen, the knives, the half-cut vegetables, the faint cartoons drifting in from the living room. Normal life, split right down the middle by something that didn't fit. We tried to rationalize, because that's what people do. Story 2. Yesterday at 5 p.m., I think my girlfriend called me from a reality that wasn't ours. I know how that sounds, so let me start from the beginning. I was in my usual spot, slouched in my computer chair, headset on, playing the new OG map mode on Fortnite. My friends and I were on Discord, yelling callouts, talking trash, the usual. The room was dark except for the monitor glow and the strip of LED lights along the back wall. It felt like a normal late afternoon, tired, a little zoned out, brain half immersed in the game. In the middle of a loud gunfight, my phone lit up beside me. No caller ID. Missed call. I ignored it at first. Nobody with good intentions uses no caller ID, right? But then I remembered I was waiting on a call from a job I had just applied for. Some companies block their numbers or route them weirdly. I told myself if it rang again, I'd answer. Not even a full minute later, it did. Same thing, no caller ID. I sighed, one eye still on the screen, and picked up. Hello? The gunshots and explosions in my ears nearly drowned out the response. I couldn't hear anything. I yanked my headset off, dropped it around my neck, and pressed the phone closer. Hello? I said again. What do you mean, who is this? It was my girlfriend's voice. Not just kind of like hers. Not that weird scammy robot tone that sounds like someone who's almost human. No. It was exactly her voice. Same pitch, same cadence, same hint of irritation when she thought I was being dumb. I straightened up. Wait, babe. Is that you? I asked. She scoffed. What's wrong with you? Why is it coming up, no caller ID? You acting weird. That's exactly how she'd react if she were confused. Same attitude, same little edge to her voice when she thought I was playing around. I relaxed a bit, but something felt off. It's hard to explain. Imagine listening to a song you've heard 1,000 times, and suddenly one note is just slightly wrong. Most people wouldn't notice, but you do, and it bothers you. It's showing as no caller ID, I said. I thought you were that job calling me. Oh, she said. Anyway, can I come over? That wasn't weird in itself. She comes over a lot, but earlier that day, she'd told me she didn't feel like coming home with me. She wanted to stay at her place, decompress, have a solo evening. She'd been pretty clear about that. So I hesitated. Now? I asked. I thought you said. Yeah, I changed my mind, she cut in. I want to come over. Just use Lyft, okay? Don't use Uber. You've got that $5 discount on Lyft right now. Just order it and send it here. That got my attention. Because yeah, I did have a $5 Lyft discount. And she knew about it. We share Lyft and Uber accounts. She uses my logins, we split rides sometimes. That wasn't public information. That wasn't something some random scammer could easily guess. Okay, I said slowly, spinning my chair a little away from the monitor. Why is your number hidden? I don't know, she said, sounding annoyed. Does it matter? Can you just get the Lyft? I don't want to deal with Uber right now. The tone. That was what was wrong. It wasn't the facts, it was the feeling. Something about the way she rushed it, like she was pushing me through a script. Yeah, I can order it, I said, reaching for my keyboard to wake up my laptop. There was a short silence. Just breathing. It didn't sound robotic. It sounded like someone sitting there waiting, genuinely expecting me to do what she asked. I opened Lyft, pulled up her address out of muscle memory, thumb hovering over the confirmation button. Then she said, actually wait, can you just send me the money instead? I'll buy it from my phone. I froze. Because that sounded exactly like a scam. The kind where someone pretends to be your relative in trouble and asks for money. I could feel my brain split in half, one part saying it's her, the other part saying this isn't how she talks when it's just us. Why? I asked. What do you mean why? She snapped. Just send me the money. It's easier. My app is already open. Another tiny wrong note. My girlfriend gets annoyed, sure, but when she wants something from me, she usually tries to be a little nicer than that. This sounded like she didn't care how she came across. Just impatient. Focused. I stared at my screen. The little Lyft map showed a car 2 minutes away, the discount loaded in. It would have been easier to just order it myself like always. Can you not just let me order it? I asked. Car's right there. She exhaled sharply, a slightly distorted breath across the speaker. Just send the money, she said, slower this time. Okay. And that was when my stomach dropped. Because that okay didn't sound like my girlfriend anymore. It sounded like someone trying to wear her voice like a costume. I don't know how I knew. I can't point to some obvious glitch. It was more like the emotional rhythm was wrong. The words matched, the voice matched, everything lined up except the feeling behind it. Hold on, I said. I'll call you back. Wait, she started, but I ended the call. My hands were suddenly shaking. I canceled the Lyft ride. Discord was still going off in my headphones, but it sounded very far away. I immediately opened my contacts and hit my girlfriend's actual number. She answered on the second ring. Hey, she said. Normal. Background noise of her TV, that little echo of her apartment I recognized without thinking. What's up? You just called me? I asked. No, she said. I've been watching TikToks. Why? You didn't try to come over? I pushed. Didn't ask me to order you a Lyft? Or send you money? She laughed, confused. No. I told you I'm staying in tonight. What are you talking about? I swallowed. Did your phone show any outgoing calls? I asked. Like, with no caller ID or something? No, she said slowly. Why are you being weird? Did someone call you pretending to be me? I stared at the no caller ID in my recent calls, the duration of our conversation clearly logged. My skin crawled. They knew about the Lyft discount, I said. They knew we share the accounts. They sounded exactly like you. Like exactly. Down to you being annoyed at me for asking who it was. She went quiet. Don't joke like that, she said finally. That's creepy. I'm not joking, I said. They even mentioned how you didn't want to come home with me earlier today. They said they'd changed their mind. I didn't, she said firmly. I never called. I've been on the couch this whole time. We both sat with that silence. If it was a scam, I said, then someone's stalking us. Like deeply. They'd have to know our conversations, our accounts, everything. And they'd have to have a perfect voice clone of you. Okay, now you're freaking me out, she muttered. Block the number. I can't. It's no caller ID. That night, after hanging up and assuring her I was okay, I sat in my dark room, the game forgotten, Discord muted. I replayed the call in my head over and over. Was it an AI voice clone? There are tools now that can mimic anyone with a few minutes of audio. But how did they know stuff only she and I knew? Not just facts, her style of arguing, the phrases she uses when she's irritated, the way she breathes when she's thinking. And why did it start off feeling like her and gradually feel hollow? That's when my brain went somewhere I didn't expect, alternate realities. I'm not saying this is definitely what happened, but it's the only way my mind can make any emotional sense of it. Story 3. Years ago, when I was about 18 and still living with my parents, something happened in our house that has stuck with me ever since. It was evening, one of those quiet, nothing special kind of nights. My dad had gone out earlier to play pool with his friends, like he usually did once or twice a week. My mom, my sister, and I were in the living room together. TV was on in the background, some cooking show, I think, and we were just chatting. It was cozy, boring, normal. The way our house was set up, the back door led into a small hallway that connected to the kitchen, and from there you could walk straight through into the living room. From where we were sitting, we couldn't see the back door, but we could hear it open and close pretty clearly. So when we heard the back door open, none of us even flinched. We all just assumed it was my dad. There was the familiar sound of the door latch, the small whoosh of air as the cold outside air came in, then the door closing again. Nothing unusual. My mom kept talking, my sister was scrolling on her phone, I was half listening. And then we heard footsteps. Now my dad is a big guy, tall, heavy, the sort of man whose footsteps you can recognize even from another room. There's a particular rhythm to it, and a weight. You feel it just as much as you hear it. I'd grown up with those footsteps. I knew them. These footsteps were wrong. They were lighter, quicker, not as heavy. There was no familiar thud-thud, just a more regular, neutral pace. At first it didn't really register, but as they came closer, I noticed my mom's voice trail off. She went quiet mid-sentence and looked at me. "Did Dad invite someone over?" I asked, frowning. He never did that. My dad wasn't the bring friends home type, especially not without warning. But that's what the footsteps sounded like to my brain. Someone else. My sister looked up too. The three of us sat there, frozen, listening. The footsteps came out of the hallway through the kitchen, heading toward the living room. Not slow, not rushed, just a normal walking pace. Every step made me more tense. I remember my heart starting to pound, and my body edging into that weird fight-or-flight mode, even though logically there was no reason for it. Then, just as the person reached the living room entrance, a male voice called out, "I'm home." I don't mean it was kind of like my dad's voice. I don't mean it sounded odd. I mean it sounded nothing like my dad. My dad has a very specific voice, deep but a little rough, with this distinct tone I could pick out anywhere. It's so familiar that if he said even one word, I would know it was him, even from behind a wall. This voice was someone else's. It was like if you took the idea of my dad coming home and overdubbed it with a completely different actor. Wrong pitch, wrong tone, wrong everything. It wasn't like he was putting on a silly voice. It just did not belong to him at all. My mom shot to her feet, so fast the couch squeaked. Her hands were shaking. "Who was that?" she said, but in this low, frightened way, not even loudly. The footsteps reached the doorway, and my dad walked in. Just my dad, wearing his usual jacket, holding his keys, looking like he always did when he came home from pool, calm, a little tired, unaware that his entrance had just shattered reality for three people. He stopped when he saw our faces. "What?" he asked. His voice, his real voice, rang out in the room, familiar, normal. "Dad, was someone else in the house?" I blurted out. He frowned. "What are you talking about?" My mom was pale. She stared at him like he was a stranger. "Whose voice was that?" she demanded. "You just said you were home, but it wasn't your voice. Was someone with you? Did someone come in behind you?" He looked genuinely confused, like he had no idea what we were talking about. I felt my skin crawl. "Were you trying to talk in a different voice? Like as a joke?" He shook his head and gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "No. I just walked in. I didn't say anything until now. I came in, locked the back door, took off my shoes in the hallway, and came straight through." "No," my sister said quietly. "We heard you. Someone said, 'I'm home.' A man. But it wasn't you." We all started talking over each other, trying to explain the exact sequence. Door opens, footsteps, voice, more footsteps, then him appearing. He kept denying it, not angrily, just baffled. He insisted he hadn't spoken a word until he stepped into the living room. "It must have been the TV," he said finally, but none of us bought that for a second. The TV had been on some cooking show with soft music and a calm narrator, not a random man yelling, "I'm home," in our house. And that voice came from the hallway. It had that echo you get when someone calls out from another room. Directional. Spatial. Anchored in the physical space of the house, not from the speakers. We all knew that. If it had just been me there, I probably would have spent years gaslighting myself. Telling myself I misheard, or I imagined it, or maybe I was tired. But my mom and my sister had heard it too. We all reacted at the same time. We all had the same experience. We even tried to describe the voice. It was higher than Dad's, my sister said. And smoother, my mom added. Not raspy like his. Different. Like a completely different person walking around our house, saying his lines. That's what stuck with me. It was like the universe accidentally queued up the wrong audio file for the scene. Like we were loading a video game, and the wrong character model and voice were briefly assigned to Dad Comes Home, and then it corrected itself. Later that night, I lay in bed and replayed it over and over again in my head. Door. Steps. Voice. Dad. I thought about intruders, about someone slipping in and out, but there was no second set of footsteps leaving, no door opening again, no time for anyone else to vanish. I got up and checked the house again before sleeping. Back door locked. Windows closed. No weird footprints, no sign of anything out of place. Just that heavy, unsettling feeling, like the walls had seen something they weren't telling us about. We talked about it on and off over the years. It became one of those stories you bring up at family gatherings. Remember that time Dad came home, but it wasn't Dad? Every time we retold it, our details stayed the same. No one's memory drifted into anything more dramatic. It was simple, solid, unchanging. A stranger's voice walked into our house in my father's footsteps. To this day, I have no logical explanation. I know how our house sounded. I know my father's voice. I know what it feels like to hear a totally unfamiliar man speak in your home when there isn't supposed to be one there. And I know that 3 people heard the same thing at the same time. It wasn't Dad, but whoever it was, whatever that thing was, used his entrance, his moment, to introduce itself. Story 4. The biggest glitch I've ever experienced happened in the middle of what should have been the nerdiest, most harmless hobby on earth, geocaching with my dad. If you don't know what geocaching is, it's basically global hide and seek for people who like GPS a little too much. People hide small containers, caches, in public places, post the coordinates online with a description and sometimes a hint, and then other people go find them. When you do, you sign a logbook, maybe swap a little trinket, and log the find in the app. It's dorky, but it's fun, and it's kind of our thing. This started with one particular cache that, for whatever reason, got lodged in both our brains like an itch we couldn't scratch. It was hidden in a little patch of woods near a walking trail. The description on the app said something fairly standard like, small container in a natural hide. No need to dig. Watch out for muggles. Non-geocachers are called muggles, because of course they are. The difficulty wasn't even rated that high. The first time we went looking, it was late afternoon. The woods were fairly open, not thick jungle or anything. We followed the coordinates, let the GPS settle, and started searching. Under logs, in tree hollows, under rocks. Usual spots. Nothing. We circled the area for a good 40 minutes. My dad muttered things like, "It's gotta be here somewhere," while I checked the app again, scrolling through the recent logs. People had found it just a couple of days earlier. Lots of found it comments. Nobody had flagged it as missing. We eventually gave up, annoyed but not too bothered. It happens. Sometimes caches get moved or stolen or waterlogged and tossed. A week or 2 later, one of us brought it up again. "That damn cache," my dad said while we were driving. "Want to try it again? It's bugging the hell out of me." I felt the same way. It was stupid, but I really wanted to find that thing. So we went back. Second attempt, same story. GPS zeroed out. We searched the whole radius. Under the same logs, around the same rocks. We widened the circle. I checked the app again. Someone had logged it as found between our visits, so it supposedly still existed. Still nothing. "That's bullshit," I said, wiping dirt off my hands. "This thing doesn't exist." "We're just blind," Dad grumbled. "Someone probably tucked it into some tiny crevice we're not seeing." Again, we gave up. Again, we drove away, but this time we were both irritated. It was like that one word on the tip of your tongue that you can't remember, except in physical form. A couple weeks pass. We go geocaching in other places, find other caches. Still, that one keeps nagging at us. One day, we're already out caching nearby, and my dad goes, "Let's give that bastard one more try." I check the app. It's been found again since our last attempt. Even better, the latest finder left a hint. The hint wasn't super detailed, but it was enough to narrow things down. Something like, "Look near the fallen log on the east side. Tucked into a root." Perfect. Now we had a target. Third attempt. We walk into the woods, follow the coordinates, then align ourselves with the hint. East side. Fallen log. Root. There it is, lying across the ground like it's posing for us. Okay, I say, if it's not here, it really is a glitch in the damn matrix. We start feeling around the roots, moving leaves and branches. After a minute or two, my fingers hit plastic. Got it! I shout. We both get that little shot of nerdy victory. I pull the small container out, unscrew the lid, and pull out the log. It's a rolled-up strip of paper with names and dates on it, normal geocaching stuff. I'm ready to sign it, feeling all smug, and then my brain just stops. At the very end of the log are two names, written one under the other. My dad's and mine. In my handwriting. For a second I literally went lightheaded, like my brain tried to reboot and failed. Dad, I said, my voice sounding weird even to me. Come look at this. He came over, leaned in, and squinted at the paper. I watched his face go from happy to confused to full-on freaked out. That's us, he said quietly. And that's my handwriting, I added. I wrote that. But I hadn't. At least, I didn't remember doing it. I remembered the 2 failed tries. I remembered us not finding it, being pissed off going home. There was no memory of us triumphantly pulling it out weeks earlier and signing the log. I checked the date next to our names. It matched the date of our last search, the second time we went looking and walked away empty-handed. So, according to the log, we had found the cache on the day we very clearly remembered not finding it. I pulled out my phone and opened the app again. Checked the logs. The last log find? Also us. Our username. On that same date. The hint we'd just followed? Also ours. I had somehow completely missed that earlier, too focused on the hint itself to read the username. But there it was. The entry said something like, found with Dad. Hard to spot. Check routes on east side. Signed with our account. I just stared at the screen and the paper, flipping my gaze back and forth like that was going to unbreak reality somehow. Are we actually losing it? I said. Like, are we that fried? Did we seriously find this before and just forget? My dad shook his head slowly. No way. No way in hell. And he was right. There is absolutely no universe where we find a cache that's been driving us crazy for weeks, and then both somehow forget the entire event like it never happened. That kind of success sticks. You remember where you were standing, the stupid joke you made, the click of the lid. It's a whole moment. We had none of that. Our memories from that second attempt were crystal clear. We searched, we argued, we cursed, we left empty-handed. But the logbook told a different story. We just stood there for a minute in the middle of the woods, holding this dumb plastic tube and feeling like the earth had shifted a couple of inches sideways. Okay, I said eventually because my brain needed something to hang on to. Let's say we somehow did find it and forgot. Why would we write a hint, log it in the app, and then collectively erase the whole thing from our brains? That's not how memory works. My dad laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. Maybe there's another version of us walking around, he said. And they're better at this shit. It sounded like a joke, but in that moment it felt a bit too close to the truth. Here's where my mind goes, and you can decide if I'm insane. It felt like 2 timelines merged. In one, we never found the cache and kept coming back, driven by frustration. In another, we did find it on that second day. Signed the log, wrote the hint, went home satisfied. Then somehow, those 2 threads got mashed together badly. We kept the memories from the we never found it timeline. The physical world, the logbook, the app entries, kept the version where we did. So by the time we came back for the 3rd try, reality had already recorded us as having succeeded. We just hadn't been there for it. Years later, my dad and I still bring it up sometimes. Remember that damn cache? He'll say. The one we found and didn't find? I'll answer. It's such a small thing in the grand scheme of life. There was no haunting, no shadow figure, no dramatic horror music. Just a little container in the woods, a roll of paper, and 2 names that shouldn't have been there when they were. Story 5. I met one of my students when he should have been about 5 years old. And he knew me. I'm not talking about that, oh, you look familiar vibe. I mean, knew my name, my vibe, the way you talk to someone you've known for a while. But according to the calendar, there is no way in hell that could have happened. I've gone over this story so many times that I feel like I'm gaslighting myself, but every time I hit the same brick wall. So context. Right now I work as a boarding school counselor. I look after a group of teens, mostly around 16. I've been doing this for 3 years. I know their drama, their heartache, their secret snacks, their crushes, all of it. It's exhausting and kind of wonderful. The boarding school is in the same city I've lived in most of my life. About 10 years ago, when I was 20, I worked at a small retail shop not too far from the school, like a 15-minute walk. Back then, that shop was my whole world. Long shifts, sore feet, fake smiles, and the occasional genuinely nice customer breaking up the monotony. One afternoon, it was dead quiet. I was behind the till folding shirts and minding my own business when the door chime went off. In walks this emo teenager. You know the type, black skinny jeans, band t-shirt, dark hoodie, too much fringe, eyeliner that says, I listen to sad music at 3 a.m. He had that lanky 16-year-old posture, like his bones were still figuring out how to be bones. He stepped inside, looked up at me, and his whole face lit up. Oh my God, Liz, he blurted. I didn't know you work here now. He said my name like we'd spoken 1,000 times. Like he was genuinely happy to see me. I froze with a half-folded shirt in my hands. I have pretty decent facial recognition. Names? I'm crap. But faces? I don't forget faces. And I had never seen this kid before. Not in school, not in the neighborhood, not as a little cousin dragged around by a customer. Nothing. So I did that awkward customer service thing where you try to be polite but also honest. I think you've got the wrong person, I said. I'm Liz, but I don't think we know each other. He laughed like I'd cracked a joke. Yeah, right, he said, rolling his eyes. It's me, Johnny. Do you have amnesia or something? He said it in that half-teasing, half-worried way people do when they think you're messing with them. There was familiarity in it. Comfort. A rhythm that only develops between people who've actually talked. The way he looked at me wasn't just, oh hey, shop lady. It was, oh hey, person I'm used to seeing regularly in my life. My stomach did a weird little flip. I shook my head. I'm serious. I've never met you. He stared at me. The smile dropped. His face went from amused to confused to hurt. And that hurt made me feel like an absolute asshole, like I'd just told my best friend I didn't remember them. You really don't know me? He asked. I felt something twist in my chest. Because whoever he thought I was, he clearly liked her. I could see it in his eyes. I'm sorry, I said. I honestly don't. There was this tiny stretch of silence where the shop felt way too quiet. No background music, no cars passing, nothing. Just him standing there, trying to process the fact that I'd erased him from my personal universe. Then he dropped his gaze, mumbled, okay, whatever, and went to grab whatever he'd come to buy. He didn't try to argue anymore. He didn't push it. That somehow made it worse. He just moved like a balloon someone had let half the air out of. He brought his stuff to the counter. I rang him up. He barely looked at me. The earlier bright recognition was gone, replaced with this heavy, disappointed quiet. He left. The door chimed. And that was it. I stood there behind the counter feeling like shit. I kept replaying his face, his tone, the way he'd said my name. I wanted to remember him. I wanted that moment of, oh, right, you're so-and-so's cousin. Or you used to be in my class. But there was nothing. Just this sharp, empty blank. It bothered me way more than it should have. Most customers, I forget the second they walk out. But this kid stuck in my head. For weeks, I kept expecting him to come back. The shop mostly served locals, and most locals are creatures of habit. So I kept watching the door, thinking, next time I see him, I'll ask where he knows me from. I'll sort this out. He never came back. Life moved on. I quit the retail job, bounced around a bit, eventually landed the boarding school counselor position. Years passed. The memory faded from hot to lukewarm, but it never disappeared. Every now and then, I'd remember that emo kid and get that same weird, unsettled feeling. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. One of my boys at the boarding house had to leave. His family was moving abroad. We were all sad to see him go, but that's boarding school life. When a kid leaves, their place is usually filled quickly. The school's in high demand. A few days after he left, I checked the roster. New student coming into my group. 16. Local. Name Johnny. Didn't think much of it. Johnny's a common name. My brain didn't connect the dots yet. We're in the common room when he arrives, duffel bag over one shoulder, hoodie on, hair falling over his face in that, I might write poetry about you way. He looks up at me. My heart just about stops. Same kid. Not looks like him. Not reminds me of him. The same damn boy who walked into my retail job 10 years ago and called me by name. Same emo vibe. Same facial structure. Same way his hair flops when he moves his head. Same little crease between his brows when he's thinking. Even his voice when he said, hi, and shifted his bag, hit me like a deja vu truck. But here's the thing, 10 years ago he looked 16. Now he also looks 16. Which means back then, He should have been around 6 years old. I plastered on my counselor's smile, heart pounding like crazy. "Hey," I said. "You must be Johnny." "Yeah," he said, glancing around. "This is the right house?" We did the whole welcome routine. Showed him his room, introduced him to a couple of the other boys, gave him the talk about house rules, bedtimes, all that. My body kept going through the motions while my brain stood in the corner screaming. Because now I had a problem. I was 99% sure this was the same kid, but I could not bring myself to say, "Hey, did you walk into a random shop 10 years ago and know me for some reason?" I'd sound insane. Or worse, I'd make him feel as weird as I felt that day behind the counter. Over the next few weeks, we got close fast. We have a very similar background, complicated family stuff, mental health ups and downs, that sort of thing. He's funny in this dry, blink-and-you-miss-it way. We talk a lot during evening check-ins. He trusts me. And every now and then, the way he looks at me has that same familiarity from the shop, like he's known me longer than he should. Story 6. I think I worked with someone who doesn't remember an entire 3-year chunk of her life. Because in her reality, it didn't happen. But in mine, it absolutely did. This all blew up over a single LinkedIn message. Just a normal, boring "hey, long time no see," that turned into a full-on existential crisis. A few days ago, I was cleaning up my LinkedIn, doing that thing where you pretend you're networking, but you're really just being nosy about who got old and who got promoted. I saw a familiar name pop up on the people you may know list. Let's call her Claire. Immediately, I remembered her face. Not vaguely, not, "Oh, I kinda remember that girl." No, I remembered her. Her laugh, the way she'd roll her eyes when a customer was being a pain in the ass, how she'd lean on the counter with her chin in her hands during slow days. I remembered us sitting at a table in the staff lounge at DLEX, our university's print shop, eating crappy cafeteria food, and talking about her boyfriend drama, while I nodded and quietly fixed everyone's printer issues. We worked together from 2012 to 2015. 3 years. Same shift sometimes, same break times. She was a student worker. I was one of the IT guys attached to the print shop. I was the "hey, can you fix this stupid copier?" guy. She was always friendly with me. That matters because most people only talked to me when something was broken. She'd come over just to chat, not for tech issues. We weren't best friends, but we were close enough that I knew about her boyfriend, their loud fights, and the day she had a meltdown at work and got sent home. So yeah, when I saw her name, it wasn't some stranger. It was, "Oh shit, Claire. I wonder how she's doing." I sent a simple message. "Hey, not sure if you remember me, but we worked together at DLEX back in the day. I was one of the IT guys. Hope you're doing well." Pretty standard, right? Nothing weird. I went back to scrolling. Later that day, I got a reply. "Hi. I'm sorry, but who are you?" At first I laughed. Okay, fair. It's been a while. So I explained. We used to chat at DLEX during our breaks. I did IT, you were a student worker. This was around 2012 to 2015. A few minutes later, she wrote back. I worked at DLEX in 1994, not 2014. I stared at the screen. You know that feeling when your stomach drops, like you just missed a step going downstairs? That's what it felt like. My brain did the mental equivalent of a record scratch. 1994? I replied. Haha, no, I mean at Dalhousie DLEX, right? Halifax. We worked there when I was on the IT team. You were finishing your degree. You used to talk about your boyfriend a lot. There was a long pause. Then, I graduated from Dalhousie in 1995. I worked at DLEX then while I was a student. I've never worked there since. I don't know who you are, and I think you must have me confused with someone else. I scrolled back up to look at her profile. It listed her degree, Dalhousie University, graduated 1995. It listed a career that lined up perfectly with someone who was in their early 20s in the mid-90s, not 2010s. It showed a marriage date that went back 15 years, to the same guy she supposedly had broken up with at work in 2014. My head started to hurt, because I remember that breakup. It wasn't subtle. One day, her boyfriend came into DLEX. He also worked there part-time. They had this huge argument behind the counter, voices raised, her eyes red. At one point, she told him to get the hell out of my life, loud enough that the students in line went quiet. Management stepped in. She got sent home early that day. Afterward, she vented to me on our breaks. They stayed broken up. That breakup was a thing. I lived through it. I saw her cry more than once. Now here she was on LinkedIn, telling me she's been married to the same guy for 15 years. I asked her one more question. Probably a mistake, because it made me sound creepy as hell, but curiosity overrode social skills. Was your boyfriend's name X? I just remember you two having a really bad breakup at work one day. She replied, I've been married to X for 15 years. We didn't break up at deal X. I really don't appreciate you bringing up personal details like that when I don't know who you are. Please don't message me again. That was it. No, oh wait, now I remember. No, oh, you mean that other gig. Just a brick wall of nope. I sat there in my office, staring at her profile picture. It was her. Older, sure. Different hairstyle. But the same eyes, the same smile, the same person I'd watch laugh about stupid printer jokes at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. My heart was pounding. I felt like I'd just been told my memories were fake, like I'd hallucinated a whole person. I started doubting myself. Maybe I got the name wrong. Maybe there were two different women who looked kind of similar. Maybe I'd mixed her up with someone else. I mentally walked through the print shop. The layout. The counters. The sound of the big printers. The smell of toner and paper dust. I pictured her, hair pulled back, ID lanyard bouncing when she walked, leaning on the counter saying, You're the only IT guy people don't groan at, you know. I remembered us sitting in the lounge, her complaining about her boyfriend's gaming addiction, me listening and nodding, trying not to say, Yeah, he sounds like a dick. I remembered her rolling her eyes and calling me the quiet one, and the way she'd always grab the same snack from the vending machine. Those memories are not fuzzy. They're detailed, textured, anchored in specific times and places. They feel just as real as any other part of my 20s. And yet, the woman they're attached to is telling me they never happened. At least, not with her. To make it worse, the timeline math is brutal. If she really graduated in 1995, she would have been well into her 40s when I worked there. But the woman I remember was in her 20s, fresh out of classes sometimes, talking about finals. She looked younger, sounded younger, dressed like every other student employee. Not like someone 20 years removed from school. So either I completely misremembered her age, face, and entire context for 3 years straight, or I knew a version of her that doesn't exist in the reality she's living in now. Sitting there, I opened my email archives, old documents, anything that might prove to me that she had been there when I thought she was. I found old IT tickets from that time period. Requests from Delex. But the student workers' names weren't on those. They were generic. Nothing with her name. I checked old social media. No photos with her. Which makes sense. I wasn't exactly the selfie type back then. But it made everything feel even smokier, like my memories were slipping through my fingers. The one thing I am sure of is this. I'm not the type to invent 3 years of casual friendship out of nowhere. I might forget someone, but I don't spontaneously generate detailed arguments, specific quotes, and an entire dramatic work incident involving people who never existed. Yet, according to her timeline, I did. I keep thinking about this awful in-between possibility. What if, in her original timeline, she never went back to Delex in the 2010s, never had that breakdown, never confided in some quiet IT guy on his lunch breaks? And what if, in mine, she did? Story 7. 2 days ago, a notebook made me feel like I'd actually lost my mind. Not metaphorically. I mean standing in my room, heart racing, flipping pages like a lunatic and saying out loud, No. 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 What the fuck? Over a handful of missing comic strips. It started stupidly simple. I keep a small stack of notebooks in my nightstand. Most of them are half empty, abandoned attempts at journaling, lists, doodles, random thoughts at 2 a.m. One of them, a soft-covered, slightly beat-up one, has lived there for years. I know it well because on the very first page, there's this single journal entry from a time when I apparently decided I was going to start journaling every day. Spoiler, I did not. Anyway, 2 days ago I needed to write a letter. A real, handwritten letter, which already feels like some kind of time travel in itself. I grabbed that specific notebook because I knew it still had a bunch of blank pages. As soon as I opened it, I saw the familiar first-page entry. Same messy date scrawled in the corner. Same line. Trying this journaling thing again. Maybe it'll help my brain chill out. Same crappy pen that had smudged just enough that the ink looked slightly bruised on the page. I remembered writing it. I even remembered sitting on my bed, years ago, with the light too bright and my brain feeling like scrambled eggs. I flipped the page. On the second and third pages, there were comic strips I'd drawn years back. Little hand-drawn panels with characters I'd made up in high school, stupid jokes, exaggerated faces, melodramatic expressions. I'd completely forgotten about them until that moment, and seeing them again hit me with this weird wave of nostalgia. One of them showed a character who was basically me with more confidence, yelling at a giant monster labeled anxiety. Another was me turning into a possum whenever someone asked how I was doing. Dumb shit, but kinda cute. I ran my fingers over the lines, remembering sitting at a desk in some old apartment, drawing them when I should have been doing something productive. I remember thinking, oh wow, I forgot these were in here. I remember smiling, a little embarrassed, a little fond. Then I turned to a clean page and wrote the letter I needed to write. Filled up one side of the page, turned it over, kept going. When I was done, I flipped through the rest of the notebook just out of curiosity. There were a few more doodles and 1 or 2 fragmentary journal attempts. I remember specifically thinking, I really don't finish anything, do I? I ripped out the letter page carefully along the perforation, folded it, and kept it. The comics and other pages stayed right where they were, bound in the notebook. I remember checking the back of the ripped-out page to make sure I hadn't accidentally torn through one of the comics. The back was blank. Everything was fine. I slid the notebook back into my nightstand. End of scene. Done. Totally normal. Today, I decided to tidy up my room. That rare, dangerous mood where you suddenly want to be an actual functioning adult. I pulled open my nightstand drawer and saw the notebook sitting there on top of some old receipts and chargers. I opened it. First page, same journal entry. Same date. Same smudged ink. I nodded to myself. Yep, this is the one. I flipped the page, already half expecting to see my dumb little comics and cringe at them again. The next page was blank. I flipped again. Blank. I frowned and went back. Turned the first page slowly, like somehow this time I would unlock a secret pocket or something. Nope. First page, journaling. Second page, absolutely empty. No comics. No doodles. No faded pen lines. Just a clean sheet of paper that looked like it had never been touched. My brain did this thing where it tried to autocorrect reality, like, oh, maybe you misremembered which notebook it was. But the memory was fresh. 2 days fresh. I wasn't trying to recall something from 10 years ago. I literally saw those comics 48 hours earlier, traced the lines with my thumb. I could picture the joke. I could picture the layout of the panels. I flipped through the rest of the notebook from front to back. Slowly at first, then faster. Nothing. No comics. No doodles. No scattered notes. Just the first page journal entry, the page I'd ripped out for the letter, and then a bunch of blank pages. I flipped it again. Checked the back inside cover. Shook the thing upside down like extra drawings might fall out like crumbs. Still nothing. My heart rate picked up in this quiet, creeping way, like my body knew something was wrong before my mind fully accepted it. Okay, I muttered. Maybe it was another notebook. That was the logical explanation, right? I must have mixed them up. I went to my closet, where I keep a little stash of old notebooks and sketchbooks. Dug them out. There were more than I realized: spirals, hardcovers, cheap ones from dollar stores. I started going through them one by one. Math notes. Half-finished to-do lists. Old character designs. Blank pages. Ugly poetry I'd forgotten I wrote. Honestly, those could stay missing, no complaints. But no comics. I knew what I was looking for. I remembered the specific panel where a tiny version of me screamed, "Nope," at a calendar. I remembered the exaggerated, thick lines I used around the monster's teeth. That kind of detail doesn't just evaporate from your brain without leaving some faint trace somewhere. I checked everything twice. Then a third time, just to be sure I wasn't being a complete idiot. No comics. I went back to the bedside notebook like it would suddenly correct itself if I stared hard enough. I pressed my fingers lightly over the second page, almost expecting to feel the ghost of ink lines, some indentation in the paper where the pen had pressed down. There was nothing. No grooves. No faint shadows. It was as if no pen had ever touched it. My brain started doing this messy, panicking spiral. You're misremembering. You're tired. You invented the comics. You dreamed this. No. I remember reading them. I remember reacting to them. I remember thinking I should scan them later. I remember checking the back of the letter page and seeing it was blank. Maybe you ripped them out before and forgot. No. There were no torn edges. No missing chunk where pages used to be. The binding was intact. The page numbers flowed normally. I even checked the page I had ripped out for the letter again, still folded where I'd left it. I unfolded it, turned it over. Blank. Just my letter. No comics on the other side. No evidence I might have mixed up which sheet I drew on. I turned back to the notebook and just stared at it for a full minute. You know that low-level panic when you lose your keys or your phone, and you swear you left them somewhere specific? Multiply that by 10, because this wasn't just something moving. It was something apparently never existing. And that messed with me. When an object moves, you can blame yourself. Oh, I put it down and forgot. You feel like an idiot, but it's manageable. But when reality quietly edits itself and then looks at you like you're the crazy one, that's a different kind of horror. I ended up sitting on the edge of my bed, notebook open on my lap, feeling absolutely ridiculous and also mildly terrified. Because either I genuinely hallucinated a couple of pages of comics in a notebook I've owned for years, complete with jokes, panel layout, and the physical sensation of turning past them, or those pages were there when I wrote that letter, and now they're not.